If you listen to part 1 of my conversation with Uday Bose, you will know just how powerful and thought-provoking it was. The response has been incredible. And today we pick up exactly where we left off.
One another insight was people felt that the whole vaccine effort was an effort to document illegal migrants. So if I turn up, you're going to take my details and then you're going to deport me because maybe I didn't fill in. So this was an insight that came through because you spoke to community leaders, you spoke to me directly.
This second part is packed with just as many insights, stories, and lessons as the first. We dive into how to build genuine customer relationships that go far beyond transactions.
Yes, have guidelines, have standards, but don't lose the opportunities, right? Don't lose focus on why we're in the appointment for the first. And you see how tired they are. I've had appointments which have been postponed. I've been hanging around in the coffee shop. I've got that. But when you see them, your heart breaks because you think, really, it just doesn't feel right for me. You look exhausted. I've had a lot of success where I've literally just been a human and I've said, I don't think you need this right now.
The real challenges of gender equality in leadership, what it takes to create supportive workplaces, and why resilience and authenticity are at the core of great leadership.
I know, you know, we know that still today, your gender does play a role in your success and your applications that you're making. For your man, you're a board member. Somehow you become a female board member. And she says, you know what, I'm not concerned about giving birth part and the baby part. I'm concerned that all this work I've put in to build my career to get to this point is going to just get lost. And I'm going to come back quickly because I can't risk taking a year or 2 years because that is really going to be terrible. And that's my driving force, is to create an environment where their gender doesn't become an aspect of their aspirations.
Every word of their shares here is nothing short of gold. So if you haven't already, go back and listen to part 1. And if you're ready, let's continue this extraordinary conversation. And at one point in this conversation, Uday shares something about leadership that genuinely stopped me in my tracks. A perspective so simple yet so powerful that it completely changed the way I think about how leaders should show up. You will hear that later in this episode. Before we jump into today's episode, I just want to say something from the heart. Over 93% of the people who watch this podcast regularly haven't subscribed. And listen, I get it. Life is busy. You click, you watch, you move on. But if you've ever felt like this show brings you value, if it has made you think, sparked a new idea, introduced you to something inspiring, then I have a small favor to ask. Please hit that subscribe button. It might not seem like much, but to me, it means everything. This podcast has always been a labor of love. No sponsors, no script, just honest conversations with people trying to make a difference in the world of healthcare. And your support, your one click, helps me keep doing that. It helps more people discover these voices. It helps this community grow. So if you're here, if you believe in this, please consider subscribing. Thank you for being here. Now let's get into the episode. So Uday, we talk a lot about guidelines and discipline in customer-facing roles, but there's also a pressing need to make every interaction count. How do you strike the balance between ensuring calls are structured and allowing reps the freedom to build real empathetic connections, especially when people buy from people?
This is incredibly important. So I've worked with many, in my current role with customer experience, I'm aware of, obviously, there are many different ways to communicate with customers. Customers like different types of channels, whether it's web, whether it's email, peer-to-peer meetings, live events, and so on. I have a bias because I've been in the customer-facing roles, and I know I'm one of the old school people. People buy from people. People connect well with people.
Yes.
That's why one of the reasons I guess you're doing this kind of a show here as well.
Yeah.
And one of my first roles, actually, I was very lucky. I came straight into oncology as a sales rep. And I remember that sometimes for certain customers, so the customers in the biggest accounts, so I was in the UK. So if you look at someone like the Royal Marsden in Fulham, it's a global center of excellence for cancer treatment. And if I wanted to meet the head of the breast cancer team, it wouldn't be uncommon for me to have to wait 4 to 6 months for an appointment, because these are very, very busy people. Everybody and anybody wants to see them. So I had, maybe in oncology, you'd get a little bit more time. So let's say I would get a 20-minute appointment. I'd have to wait 6 months for that appointment. And it's stressful, right? Because I have one shot, and in 6 months waiting, so much has happened. So the product's been approved. It's got additional data. I don't know how much the customer knows because it's my first meeting. In 20 minutes, it takes me like 15 minutes just to say good morning, right?
Yeah.
So, and what I learned there was how it's important that we are understanding of the reality of that appointment in that situation. Now, the company I worked in had a very clear philosophy around customer facing teams. I had a call rate, I had a daily call rate target. There was certain content they wanted me to share. Now, in those days, it was all paper based, but nevertheless, I was new and I was very, very religiously following what I was being told. Now, in a 20-minute appointment to do all of the things that they want me to do, I tell you now, I felt very restricted. I felt very, very constrained. And that was one now when I've become a marketeer and now in the roles I have, this is something I'm very passionate about emphasizing that it's very important. Guidelines and standards are incredibly important. Discipline is incredibly important because same reason, we have to wait so long for that appointment. That appointment has to matter. I may not get another chance for another 4 months. And if we're talking about introducing a product to a physician that could potentially extend the life of a patient with cancer, there's no games here. This is as serious as it gets. Now, you need to allow me as a customer facing person, you need to trust me, equip me to make the most of that time. But if you burden me with too many tick boxes, so I have to show you this, I have to deliver you this, I have to provide you with this, I have to get your answers to these 5 questions, and I have to listen for any side effect issues and I have to report them if you give me too many things to do, I'm not going to achieve anything. And I see there is a need, and I'm very lucky. The organization I work with, we're very pragmatic. We're very, customer orientated. And I have a role where I can push this as well. To, yes, have guidelines, have standards, but don't lose the opportunities, right? Don't lose focus on why we're in the appointment for the first place. Yeah. We're in the appointment to help a customer, help a patient. And having the freedom to be able to spend an hour, if the customer gives me an hour, I need to take that hour. I don't need to be thinking, oh my God, to get to my second call target for today, I need to leave this appointment in 5 minutes. That's not helpful. So my again, humble recommendation and advice is again that absolutely standards, very, very important. We have to do them. I'm pushing that very hard in my organization. But keep the focus on why we're in the call in the first place. What are we trying to achieve? And make sure your standards and your processes encourage that, as opposed to, because to be honest, hitting a call rate and not getting any prescriptions, nobody wants that, right? So that doesn't help them. And I just wanted to make sure we make that point clear. And if there's a chance to,
I think you've raised an incredibly important point, and I'm sure a lot of the people run into these situations very often when they have 20 things to discuss, but they've got only 20 minutes. And in those situations, how would you advise people to prioritize?
it's horrible. And I honestly, it's a terrible, horrible analogy to use, but it literally, and I've been on the receiving end as well. And it just feels like somebody's vomiting and you're like, oh, I just need to get out of it because you cannot process so much information, right? And the reason I really love the role I have today is because we have to get out of that mindset of this one channel, one shot. If you do CX well, this is a much more sophisticated approach. So before that 20-minute meeting, I have had various opportunities through other channels to impact that customer. And if we're capturing insights effectively as an organization, we are very, very well informed in terms of what's happening. So, for example, I would be able to make sure that customer attends that plenary presentation, either online or in person. I would, through my medical team, more than likely be able to make sure we have some interactions with them. If they're an investigator on the trial, I would have got to know them as a company would have. Maybe not me as a rep. Of course, not me as a rep if it's pre-approval, but my company has opportunities, right? And I'm part of my company. I'm not, as a rep, I'm not an outsider. I'm part of my company. So ideally, in the new world we live in today, that 20-minute appointment has already been cushioned by maybe 6 months, if not more, of preparatory work. So, and if everybody's along that chain is documented, then I have all the information I could ever need. Doctor, I don't need to talk to you about the plenary data because I know you were there. Thank you so much for your feedback. I also understand you attended an advisory board a few months ago where you would have had a chance to listen to your peers. So I'm not going to waste your time, Doctor, by going through the data with you again. You're clearly very conversant with that. Actually, I'd like to get straight to the point because we only have a limited amount of time. Based on what you've heard, can you think of a patient where you think this product could have a role in your current clinical practice? Now, that is a much more effective way to have a dialogue because I know my company has helped me do all of this preparatory work. And actually 20 minutes, if we focus with that, we can then start talking about patient profiles. What does it take to get the patient on the treatment? How do I support you with side effect management and education of the system? So this urgency of 20 minutes, I have to do everything, only happens if your organization hasn't embraced the complete channel solution approach. to look at it holistically from a customer's perspective. So this is a great opportunity I think we in life sciences have. I'm fortunate at the company I work in. This is what, and my role today, that's what we're really pushing to make sure that we move away from this one moment in time customer interaction to an actual relationship with the customer and a center of excellence and an organization and a healthcare system. It's not just a transactional one-off. It's an actual relationship, as any good relationship should be. And we use the power of the company as opposed to relying on one individual in a 20-minute call to go through 15 things and then say, where's the prescription at the end of it? It doesn't work like that. So I think that would be an important learning. And when you talked about what's been critical success factors for good, effective launches, commercial success, I think this in the modern day, companies who aren't leveraging that whole ecosystem are certainly missing an opportunity there.
Wow, that's such an important point that you mentioned, and I'm so glad you brought this up in the conversation. I'm 100% sure this is going to benefit thousands of people out there who come across or run into these situations day in and day out. Thank you for including
It's so
that.
frustrating because when we've got launches are, you just get one shot with the launch, right? And it's the data, I think IQVIA have done these launch excellence studies, which are brilliant. If you haven't had a chance, I shouldn't, I guess. Their reports are honestly very, very good. The launch excellence surveys they've done. And consistently, they've shown the first 6 months of a launch set the trajectory of that launch. So again, going back to that analogy, and it's a real, if I have to wait 6 months for that first appointment, the pressure is unimaginable. If I'm that rec in London and the Royal Marsden is my biggest account and I only get in there once every 6 months,
Yeah.
come on, help me out. Help me out, head office. Help me out, team. Talk to me. Tell me what's going on. Don't assume that just because you tell me, that means I'm going to go off and promote things. Treat me like an adult. Treat me with the respect I deserve. And let's just work together, because our collective, going back to what we talked about right at the beginning, incentives, our collective goal surely is to make sure this physician has all the information they need to make a balanced, reasoned judgment on whether or not the treatment that we just launched is appropriate for their patients. But we're all here to do the same thing. So let's work together to be able to do that, and not just do your bit and move on. Just share the information. Let's build a data ecosystem where we can be patient-centric, customer-focused, and work together for the benefit of the patient.
And I think that the doctor's appointments or the office visit can be so unpredictable. Not sure about the UK, but in other markets,
They're cancelled. I've had it happen many times.
you can prepare as much as you want, but there are visits at the midnight. You're meeting with a surgeon, and you've got just a few seconds. You just leave the sample, leave the monograph, and that's it.
And you've seen how tired they are. I've had
Yeah.
appointments which have been postponed. I've hanging around in the coffee shop. When you see them, your heart breaks because you think, it just doesn't feel right for me. You look exhausted. And I've had a lot of success where I've literally just been a human and I've said, I don't think you need this right now. And also, this is when we talk about courage as well. One of my first sales managers told me the first thing you do is negotiate for your time. 10 minutes. But honestly, the things we want to talk about today, first time we've met, can you give me 20? Can I take a little bit more time from you just because these are the things we want to cover today? Many of us don't negotiate for time. Many of us just say, it's 10 minutes, that's all I've got. Give people, maybe see if you can get some more time. Be brave to walk away from an appointment sometimes if it's in the best interest of your customer, because that's not a good customer experience, right? Being exhausted at the end of a 14, 16-hour shift in the NHS and then being introduced to a whole lot of data and charts as that, this is just not helpful. So sometimes the brave thing is to do is to say, with respect, doctor, you need this time, take it. That's what you would want as a customer, right? I was going back to what we said earlier, treat people the way you want to be treated.
Exactly. Wow, that was a brilliant point.
So what the NHS did, which was brilliant, is they actually so they did a couple of things based on the insights. Another insight was people felt that the whole vaccine effort was an effort to document illegal migrants. So if I turn up, you're going to take my details and then you're going to deport me because maybe I didn't fill in. So this was an insight that came through because you spoke to community leaders, you spoke to people directly through themselves. So that was one thing they did. So the NHS said, we're going to open vaccine clinics. We're not going to take any details from you. Just come in and take your vaccine, for goodness sake. And the people who ran those clinics were Somalian doctors and nurses, trained UK NHS, but is the community supporting themselves. That immediately gave people a level of comfort. So two of my main objections, one is I don't see my people advocating for the vaccine. And the other one is my other concern for rejecting treatment is one that you didn't even think about. But that's the reason I have, because I don't want to risk being deported because of my migration status. And these two insights led to this. So this isn't my theorizing this is data, again, the data's available online. But this is, again, about comes back to CX. It's about really, truly understanding where are your customer, where are they coming from, and how do we address those needs to be able to get them the treatment that they want. And that for me is why, again, DEI is such an important topic for me, because it's not something unattainable. It's something that is painfully, it needs to be done, and it can be done. We just have to put a concerted effort and ask the question of ourselves. And I was so clear, literally about a month ago, I was in a meeting in my current organization. And I've always prided myself on building diverse teams. And I always talk about it here publicly and privately and always. And somehow I ended up on a leadership panel and we were all men. Now it was so stark. I didn't even realize that I was there, and the compare was female. She was doing a great job. And then somebody asked a question and it came up on the screen behind us. And there was a lot of whispering. And I looked and I was like, thank you so much for calling it out. Because this is how it begins. You've called it out. And I don't feel bad because you've called it out. I feel great that we've created a culture where you can see things and call it out. So that's number one great thing. And it's fact. There's no denying it. I've checked everywhere. We're all men and we're all in this age group. Yeah, we're all in the same age group. So this is not right. So then one of my colleagues said, no, it's fair. However, in his team, majority actually, if his leadership team were women, had we had a different type of panel, we would have had a different. And I said, all fair, but what they see is what they see. And this is something that we take on board. I did flag, though, something which just came to me at the time. It's not a rehearsed response, but it came to me at the time, is it's also equally important that you don't see a panel of men and assume they're all the same. Because if it had been a panel of women, you should also not assume they're all the same.
Yeah.
Just because I look different, it doesn't mean I think different, right?
Correct.
And it's most important that we think different. So let's not also fall into another bias, which says because you're a man, you only have one way of thinking and you don't think about diversity. So I said, it's great to call it out because optically you're right, but it's also important to keep in mind just because we may look the same, it may not be as bad, because if we think differently, there's some hope here. But if we look the same and think the same, we're done for. So, and I looked at my group and I said, let's just make sure, guys, we recognize that we have a responsibility to represent the diversity of our teams when we're sitting here, not just ourselves and the men in our team. So, but it was interesting because I thought that was, it was great to call it out, but also let's not assume that all genders are the same and people think the same, because that's, again, not necessarily the right thing to do.
That's a great example and very well explained. And I often think about legacy, not just in terms of work, but the kind of world we leave behind for the next generation. And Uday, as a father of 3 daughters, when you look at gender equality in leadership today, what kind of progress do you want to see for them by the time they are entering the workforce?
So what keeps me up at night, literally does keep me up at night. It's a real concern. So my eldest is 17. So she's applying to universities. Brilliant in terms of what she wants to do. Our middle daughter, 15, doing GCSEs next year. Also incredible ambition and things that she wants to do. And the youngest is 10, similar. And I love that. And I listen to them and I think, brilliant, go. And I tell them, and my wife tells them as well, anything, go for whatever you want to do, whatever makes you happy, whatever brings you joy. Pursue that path. And I want them to feel and experience that they can do that. There really is no barrier to that. However, I know, you know, we know that still today, your gender does play a role in your success and your applications that you're making. And that's my driving force, is to create an environment where their gender doesn't become an aspect of their aspirations. They should be able to aspire and get to anything they want to get to based on their merit, based on their hard work. And that's why I work so hard on this topic. And in my own organization today, I'm a co-sponsor for our Women in Leadership program. I'm a mentor for our Women in Tech program as well. And I'm an active advocate for it. And I spend a lot of time getting to know the people on these programs, having very open and candid conversations, and some really candid conversations and really emotional stuff, which really, it's quite upsetting when you listen carefully to what you're hearing. You think, wow, that's wrong. About a year or so ago, a really senior female leader on our leadership program did really well in her career. She's progressing really, really well, and she's about to go on maternity leave. It's her first child, and we're talking about it, and I'm obviously father of 3 kids. I'm like, oh, it's amazing. You're going to have so much fun. And I said, so what are you concerned about? Any concern? And she says, you know what? I'm not concerned about the giving birth part and the baby part. Yeah. And she goes, I'm concerned that all this work I've put in to build my career to get to this point is going to just get lost. And when I come back and I'm going to come back quickly because I can't risk taking a year or 2 years because then it's really going to be terrible. And I'm like, so your biggest concern is about coming back to your role and what there's going to be? She goes, yeah. And I thought, wow, that's just, men wouldn't think that. Number one, men wouldn't even think to take that much time, typically. And even if they did, it's not in the psyche for us to think that. And so we had and I was just thinking, wow, that's how sad is that that's your joy about having your first child and raising them and having a year with them is clouded by your concern. And so we talked about how do we deal with that then? And she goes, it's not just, I've spoken to other women as well. This is a real thing. So we are concerned, and there are comments that are made about coming back to work too soon, or not coming to work. You can't win. If you come back too soon, you're a bad mother because
Yeah.
you don't want to spend time with your child. If you take too long, or you're not about your career, you don't care about your career. I mean, what do you do? What's the golden rule? There isn't one, right? So whatever I do. So we talked about some mechanisms. So she was the head of a department. We talked about maybe if you're convinced you're going to come back at that point, maybe plan in your handover notes how you're going to reintegrate in. How are you going to keep in touch? So we talked about some techniques to be able to work on that. But I found, again, it's just additional effort you're having to make, almost apologetically, because you're having a family. And so that, again, I thought, oh God, I've got 3 daughters. They're going to get to a point in their lives where hopefully they're working, they're successful, and then they're going to have to make a choice about having a family or pursuing my career. Why is that a choice? That shouldn't be a choice. You should be able to have both. The work I'm doing from a mentoring perspective in the organization, but also outside of the company I work for, is to ask these questions and provoke people to think it shouldn't be a choice. You shouldn't have to choose between career and family or any other life decision, not just having a family. You shouldn't be judged based on decisions you make for your own health and well-being. We should encourage that. Increasingly, we are finding with mental health, especially, people need to feel comfortable to be able to step away and not be judged because they've made that choice. And so I find myself as a leader often having those conversations proactively to say, look, it's tough, it's intense, take a break. We don't judge you. And I just when I went on holiday just recently, we were talking before the call started. I didn't plan to send a note on it, but I just was thinking, and I thought, you know what, people just remember the world keeps spinning. Yeah. Nothing changes, as much as we would hate to say it, but none of us are going to be so important that if we stop working for a week or two to take some time for ourselves, things will stop. Things will continue. And when you come back, you have a bit of a learning curve again, as I'm having, but it'll continue. So stop burdening yourself with this and preventing yourself from living a life. And that's my hope, certainly for my daughters. And as I'm active and I have a voice and I'm in a role where I can support that, I'm doing that certainly with everything I have.
That's very well said. And sad reality of our society. I think we construct such narratives, and also we glorify people who look at her. She bounced back within 6 months and 8 months. Now she's back in action. She's managing home. She's doing this. She's doing that. Why put so much pressure? Why glorify that hustle? Let people be who
Absolutely.
they are and let them take their own time. It's, I think, each to their own.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
And that again, and this is, sometimes I feel it's unfair, but we had, I was inspired by a recent senior leader in our organization, a board member female board member. We have two female board members, and often people would focus on the fact that they're female board members.
yes.
They're board members in their own right. Yeah, they've worked hard to get there. So how about we refer to them as board members first? Because you don't talk about the male board members. You don't say, oh, you're a man and you're a board member. If you're a man, you're a board member. If you're a female board member, somehow you become a female board member. And I just found that it's so profound that that's how we were referring to, and I just thought, and she did such an amazing job in terms of really being vulnerable and being honest in terms of, it's tough. I have to balance. There are things that I do for my family and there are decisions I have to make, and I manage that. And I don't want praise for that. I don't want congratulations. I don't want case studies on that, because that's my life. That's what we have to do. We want to change that, but we have to do that. Let's change that. Let's glorify the fact these are sacrifices that all women are making. Everybody's having to do something. So let's consciously address this. But it starts with us, right? And the language that we use. And again, recently I myself, I'm definitely not perfect. I have blind spots. And again, I'm very fortunate in my team. I have people who remind me and tell me and make me think, wow, I didn't even think that. It's an unconscious thing. You end up automatically saying things, and then I've got to stop doing that. I've got to stop assuming things. and saying things that actually, when you think about it, that sounds quite old fashioned and old school and archaic. So I'm as guilty as most. We all need to get better at this.
And there are a lot of leaders want to do more around diversity and inclusion, but they get stuck, worried about saying the wrong thing or not knowing where to start. If you were mentoring one of them, what would you say is the first step?
So somebody asked me this question a while ago. If I was CEO for a day, so I'm very lucky. I'm blessed. I was fortunate to be managing director for the UK and Ireland organization. So I think best job in the world for me, from being from the UK as well. Heaven. And in that role, I had a level of autonomy to make decisions, and I crave that because it's great to talk. Everybody can talk, right? Everybody's got opinions. But when you're fortunate to have a role where you can actually do something about it, you have to do something about it. You have to change the narrative. And I felt in those years I was able to move things forward. I was able to not role play, but demonstrate and show what it looks like by the decisions I made, by the appointments I made, by the examples I offered, to make it tangible to people in terms of why diversity is important, by celebrating it, by highlighting it, stressing it, and improving it. One of the things I said, though, and I stand by this, as a managing director of a company, if I miss my target, my financial target in year one, it's a terrible start. It's not a good start. I guarantee you, in the world we live in, I wouldn't even get to the end of year two if my performance continued to be so far behind. And I'm not criticizing any company. That's a business decision, because not hitting your numbers, that's what you have. That's the role. That's what you have to do. You don't do the role, there's a consequence of that. And I said, in the context of DE&I, the day we start holding leaders to account in the same way for missing the DEI targets, then we'll make a change. So if you told me that as a CMD, Uday, you can smash your numbers, 110, 120, 150% of target, but the only way you're going to maximize your objectives is if you also achieve your DEI targets as well. Quelle surprise. It will change, because, like it or not, we are driven by incentives. That's just the nature of these roles. If you're in a CEO role, if you're a CMD role, managing director role, a sales leader role, if you're a leader, you are typically given an incentive. And how many of us have in our incentive plans a component about DEI? Not many. But if you had it in there and it was a meaningful amount, it would hurt if you missed it. You'll change it. So if I was CEO for a day, and I only have a day because that's as much as I'll get. And if there was one decision I could make, that would be the decision. And please, it's important that the listeners and everybody understands this is not an emotional, philanthropic, be popular for feminists decision. This is a business decision. This has a direct consequence on your performance as a business, because the data shows more diverse boards lead to more successful outcomes. There is a correlation. The higher the number, the better the ratio in terms of male and female on your boards, on your leadership levels, the better the outcome. And we shouldn't even still be talking about male and female, because gender's evolved as well. The more diversity you have, the more different opinions you'll get, the more representative you will be, and the better you will connect with your customers, your purchasers, your society. So this is the reason I proponent this so strongly, is not because to tick a box around a popularity thing that it's a good, cool thing to say. This is embedded in a business reason. So this is not a plea for ticking a gender equality box. If you want to be successful as a business, start representing the customers that you are looking to serve. Yeah. Start being like them, representing them, and then you'll see that outcome come through. And it's not just about optically having it. It's about giving a voice as well. So making sure these voices then can be heard. So encourage the inclusivity almost before the diversity. Because if you don't have the inclusive environment, bringing in diverse talents isn't going to make any difference, because you're going to make them conform to the status quo. So create the right environment, bring in diversity, and then let the inclusivity lead to the improvement in the outcome.
Powerful piece of advice. Give me goosebumps.
And Kaushik, the other thing is, because we can all now leave this saying, well, yeah, if my company did that, what's stopping you from putting that in your objectives? Nothing. Good companies, you set your own objectives, right? Even if it's 10% of your objectives, if each of us put it in our own objectives, that I want to increase the diversity in my team, go for it. It will be a brave leader to push back on that and say, no, actually, I don't want you to have a diversity thing in your. So if it's not coming top down, push it bottom up. You have a voice, especially if you're a leader. The only where I have some compassion is if you're not a leader of a team, if you don't have an opportunity to shape that directly, talk about it, offer it, raise it, be a pain and pushing it. But if you're a leader, even if it's a small team, you have a chance, if it's not given to you as an objective, to take it as an objective. And that is the kind of role playing, going back to your topic about leadership and demonstrating what good leadership looks like. For me, it's being brave and taking on some of these tasks, which are maybe not easy tasks, easy targets, but most meaningful targets aren't easy. That's why they're meaningful targets. So take that on would be my humble.
Very, very powerful piece of advice there. I really, it resonated really well with me, and I'm sure it'll resonate with thousands of our audience out there too. And talking about some philosophical questions, philosophy on leadership and life, what's the single most important philosophy you try to live by as a leader?
Yeah, again, for me, it's about authenticity of myself and the same of others. So the philosophy is to ensure people can be themselves, create the environment where people don't feel they have to conform to being a certain way. Their opinions matter, where they're coming from matters, their identity matters. And as I've said all along, the way I can say that a million times, I've done in my previous role with the open days with new employees, every single one of them, I would be there to emphasize that. But if you can't do that, then just be yourself and show people that this is me, this is my view. I appreciate it may be different, but I think it's important to be heard. I think it's important that I share that this is where I'm coming from. Of course, we consensus will work together. I'll follow the decision, but don't leave discussions without being heard. It would be my leadership philosophy, my employee philosophy. If you're lucky to work in an organization in our sector, you have a voice, and don't ever take for granted how impactful that can be. Good leaders, great leaders, they're always on the lookout for listening to these gems, these insights that come. And I've been so, in my career, I've been so, again, whether it's spending a day in the field, and just, I learn so much, honestly, like the front line, because what we believe we're doing in the office versus what's actually being felt by our customers and our representatives in the field. Sadly, there is often a disconnect, but you're never going to realize that unless you experience it, unless you go there with an open mind. Create the right environment for the individuals to share with you openly, not to feel fear of repercussions or feel that they're telling on anybody. And good leaders can do that. You can take that feedback, you can aggregate it, you can work it in a way to drive change. So that would be my philosophy. Listen and use your voice.
Before we conclude our today's episode, if you could put one sentence on a billboard for millions of people to see, what would it say?
One sentence, my lord. Where is it here? I put it here. There's a very famous saying I keep with me always, which I'll read, which is actually John Lennon said it apparently.
Right.
And his phrase, which I keep with me always, is everything will be okay in the end. If it's not okay, it's not the end. Isn't that cool? I find that one, and the reason I keep it with me is because there are so many things I do on a daily basis while I'm working where I think that this isn't right. I want to do something different. I want to do more. This isn't enough. And it's just a reminder, and that's okay. It doesn't have to be, if you decide it's the end and you want to walk away from it, that's your call. But it's kind of that resilience topic. It's that don't give up. If you believe in something, if you're not satisfied with something, you can go back to it. You can still work on it. Don't compromise would be probably, that would be the word. Don't compromise.
Great piece of advice. That brings us to the end of our today's discussion, Uday. Thank you. Honestly, it's rare to have someone speak with such clarity and honesty about leadership, about culture, and the future of pharma, from shared leadership to designing real customer experiences. And even your work in DI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's been a masterclass in thinking differently and leading intentionally. And I love that this conversation isn't just theory, it's personal, it's practical and human. And I'm sure our audience will walk away challenged, inspired, and hopefully motivated to rethink how they lead, how they design for their customers, and how they shape their culture. It's always a privilege to have you back on the show. And thank you for your time, your honesty, and the wisdom you've shared. And I can't wait for people to hear this episode.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much. It's a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you there.